So this one is a little bit different format than chapter 4 to chapter 6. That the first criteria doesn't ask the policy just yet. It asks if you have made an inventory of environmentally or culturally sensitive excursion. This means that if you can give us a proof that you have a file where it records different types of excursion, where those excursions are classified or categorized into different sensitivity aspects. So whether you have cultural excursion or you have animal related excursion, and for this you can easily use our category again under chapter 0. So I'm going to go through chapter 0 quickly. We do have under chapter 0, if you click on brands, products and services, there's 0.3 sensitive activities types. So we divide sensitive activity types into activities into 5 different types. So culture-based activity, nature-based activity, freshwater, marine-based, community-based, and animal activities. So you can use this as a category for you to categorize the current excursions that you are offering at the moment. So if you do categorize them into different category by their sensitivity, or you flag their sensitivity with a certain color, however you do it, you need to show that you have an inventory of those excursions where they categorize. Then in that case you can answer yes. If not, it is a non-mandatory criteria, so please answer no. Because there's many companies say, oh yes, we do make an inventory of blah, basically just copy paste what we say here without being able to prove anything in document, then it is still not accepted. For 7.2, this is the policy. So it asks if you have policy for sustainable excursion. So as we go through it, you can see that we ask for different types of policy regarding different types of suppliers that you work with due to the nature of business varied. So make sure you do have a different set of policy for them. For sustainable excursion policy, this is also applied for you because many tour operators, they do operate their own tours at a certain destination within the country. So always view our guidance on what are the excursion policy that you can put in, or also go through the whole chapter again, because that's where you can find different terms and clauses for your policy. And if you have it, again, it is mandatory, so you need to have it in place. I just show you different sources where you can find reference in order to create the policy for yourself. The policy needs to be ready before you get to Travel Life Partner. Supplier communication, again, after you have policy, communication is the key to influence your partners, because without any communication, everything would just remain in paper. So the means of communication can be the same with suppliers. The documents that you use are different though. However, whatever means of communication that you use to communicate with your suppliers, please report it here. It is also mandatory for this criterion. So if you haven't done so, you need to show us a very clear plans of how you're going to do it and how many suppliers are you targeting at the moment. Distribution of codes of conduct or guidelines for sensitive excursion or activities. So for different types of, as you know, for different types of excursion, there would be a different codes of conduct because the activity are very distinct from each other. So for animal activities, a different codes of conduct. For community-based, there's different codes of conduct, which basically means that you have some guidelines on how your clients or how your suppliers should look at. So with community-based, especially when there's ethnic minorities, what would be the requirements to conduct the tours in order to avoid creating any negative effects on their sociology. We do not have we do have some examples for certain sensitive excursion. However, we do not have all codes of conduct for those sensitive excursion because there are many. So this is really up for you with your experience to create this codes of conduct. You can easily find this, especially on different NGO websites who work specifically towards a certain sensitivity types in order to obtain this code of conduct. Or if you bring your clients to protected areas, the protected areas themselves might have their own codes of conduct that you could use. So yeah, you need to show us that at the moment, because you have answer here in the first place that you take, we do offer this, we do offer this or that, or some more activities. So you, when we do the audit, we would look back at what you have reported here to see how many types of sensitive activities that you offering, to see whether you have code of conduct for those specific types. So it is a mandatory criteria, so it would take some time for you to come up or finish with those codes of conduct. Again, we do not have templates on this, so you have to use different sources to create your own codes of conduct. In this case, certified excursion, we ask specifically if any of excursion providers that you work with have any certification on sustainability. Again, if it's not, because you can say that in most of the country, most of the time, the excursion providers do not have, due to the size of their company, they do not have, or they do not work with an international sustainability certification, which is understandable. Then you can click on NA here if none of them have it. Training materials and advice, again, you can add them in the system to join the Travel Light training. That is how you advise and giving them training materials. So if you do so, you can report it here. Contract conditions, the same with contract conditions with the other suppliers. Basic sustainability clauses are asked to be in the contract. However, with accommodation providers, you see that we do not make it mandatory, because most of the time it's you, inbound tour operator, who operate the tours itself. So you already have the sustainability policy within the company. So that's why we make it non-mandatory in this case. So from 7.8 to 7.14, you see they're all mandatory. However, those are also the policy that you can put in for excursion providers, because it basically says, for example, 7.8, that the company do not offer any activities that harm human, animals, and plants. With the next one, you can see that the excursion and that you do not offer, or you expect that the excursion provider do not offer any captive wildlife activity where their welfare is not protected. The same thing with wildlife harvesting, that you do not harvest, consume, display, so sell or trade any wildlife species. The one different thing is that wildlife interaction. So if you do have excursion that include wildlife interactions in here, then one of the things you need to provide to us is the code of conduct that you have for the wildlife interactions. And this is also a part of your policy. So you need to put this in the policy, but other than the policy, you need to provide an adding to this, which is the code of conduct that you have for wildlife interaction activities. And this is applicable if you do offer wildlife interaction activities. But if you do answer that you do not have any animals activities here, then you can skip giving the code of conduct, but you still need to have this in your policy. Skill guides. So in this case, we ask that in those sensitive cultural sites, your guests need to be guided by skilled or certified guides. So in this case, you need to tell us whether they're certified and if they have an extra certificate from like protected from nature reserves, for example, on how to operate tours in a nature reserved area. And if you do a research and investigation on the knowledge of your tour guides to consider if they're skilled or not by taking feedback from your clients after that tour guide have taken those guests on those sensitive excursions. So that is something that you can explain and add here to prove that they are skilled guides. And supporting local communities. This is also a policy. However, this policy asks more that you need to give us some practical example that this policy is implemented. And this asks if you do support local community. So this so you can explain to us if you have if you add social projects in your tour offer, if you purchase any service or goods from local communities, if you add going to a certain local community and have a hands-on class on how a certain crafts are made, which is specific to that local communities. So any of those that consider local community support can be explained here. So again, this requirement has this criterion has two requirements. First, to have your policy ready, and second, to have already some practical examples that you have been implementing this. 47.14 is about supporting environmental and biodiversity protection. This can easily be proven by the fact that you include tours to biodiversity protection area like nature reserve or national parks, and you do pay an entrance fee to those places, because the entrance fees go back to improving and conserving the biodiversity of the area. So just by doing that, you're already in compliance with this criteria.